issue. Why are you caring about sustainability? Because you wouldn't be in this room if you didn't care. And it's a personal thing for us. So one of the ways of describing that is that the core issue is about how we inhabit the earth. We already know what we take up 4 times the amount of resources that any other country does per person. So we inhabit the earth, and we do it in a way to nourish ourselves, to feed ourselves. We don't do it very well. We'll talk about that. We shelter ourselves, and we have to do it through all kinds of life cycles, our own aging life cycle and the life cycle of any particular year and what the weather is like. Plus, and this last one I think is why I think this is a business question. It doesn't, but you know, this kind of topic existed in the environmental schools for a long time. It existed in places which didn't have anything to do with business. It's a business question because one of the core issues is we are value-adding creatures. We're creative creatures. We want to do something that makes a difference. We want to invent things. And that process, every time one of us wants to invent something, we're leading toward the possibility of creating a business, because we then want to sell it, right? Or at least exchange something, and we're likely to impact how we inhabit the earth. So that's the issue we're working on here. So I thought this would be an interesting question for us here in the business school. What if you thought about habitation as a business? Where and how we live as a business. If you said, we as a group are in the business of inhabiting the planet. Now, when we're looking at something as a business, there's some questions we ask. So I thought we'll just ask those. Don't we want to, when we have a business, how many of you have businesses already? Okay, thought there'd be a few of you who already did. It's the nature of the creative mind. Don't you always want to grow your income more than your expenses? What happens if you don't? You don't stay in business very long, right? So you have to keep managing your expenses, hoping that you're able to grow your income. Don't you also want to have your asset base grow? Because if you don't have more assets to work from, you're constantly trying to maintain getting the return on the same assets you've got. So part of what every business looks at is how do we grow the asset base? And then, of course, you're investing all the time. And you'd like to, no matter how much you invest, get a higher return on that investment than the other ways you can invest it. Those seem like reasonable business questions. Well, let's look at and see if we did that, and we did it for the earth, our way of inhabiting. So are we growing more of what we need at a rate that is greater than how we use it? So we use oil in the earth, we use water, we use many things, and so we are expensing that, right? We're drawing it out and using it, and as far as I know, unless you know something I don't, it is increasingly becoming lower in terms of our availability to get to it. So we aren't growing it in any way at a rate that is faster than we're using it. Secondly, our asset base, same problem, right? Are we actually having more trees on the planet? Do we actually have more resources? Are we creating more of a base off of which we could do the kind of business work we need and invent the things we need? I think not. So we're not very good in the business there. The other real challenge is, and how many of you are interested in agriculture? Do you track the food industry, what's going on with Cargill and folks like that? I feel there'd be some folks who are interested in that. Have you tracked what it's costing to try and produce the food that's on our plate now? How much more increasingly we're paying in technology and investment in order to feed the same number of people. And of course, taking into account all the costs, which is an important part of this. So let's look at how well we're really doing on our balance sheet of inhabitation. I didn't know any other nice way to say this. We just have a phony balance sheet, right? We do not count everything. We don't count what it costs to produce any particular product any of us consumes. We have no way to account for that. So it basically means that our business of inhabiting the earth, we're lying. We have a phony balance sheet. And of course, we're draining our reserves. We're depleting the planet's asset base, and we're investing more than we're getting as a return. So now, let me ask you, if you, in your family, go home to your family and you say, as a family member managing my assets, I am continuously consuming more than I bring into the family. I'm taking out more than my share. I am selling off the assets we have because I need even more than that. And no matter how much it is work that I do, I'm getting back very little. Would you be thrown out pretty soon out of your family? Yeah. So at a personal level, we would never put up with that. We would never put up with that you're allowed to consume more than you use, sell off the family assets, and invest energy for which almost nothing comes back. This is a very serious challenge. So what I'm trying to help us look at, let's see, so yes, is what are the other options? How could we think about this? And these are the names I call them. Feel free to change them. But they have an increasing level of ability to impact us living on a healthy planet and inhabiting in a way that I think makes for a healthy business. The lowest level, I already gave you the compliance model. So the government says do it, the regulation says do it. Sometimes the industry organizations set standards and say do it. And we comply. The next level up is the sustainability level, where what we do is we try and get back to the level we were at. We have an assumption that whatever we did, if we can get back to that level, we could sustain it. And the third level, which is the one I want to try and talk you into talking a lot more about and paying a lot more attention to, is how do we bring in more? How do we regenerate things? Now let me tell you why I know this is possible. Have any of you read a book called Tending the Wild? It's a study of, I have it on the, I'm going to give you a handout of these slides, by the way, when we're done. And it has it listed in the back. Tending the Wild is a really interesting book because it was a study of Native American tribes and how they lived with the planet. Most of us, when we look at the idea of sustainability, we have this image, and I did too, that's changed a lot for me in the last few years, that if we could just get humans to be less destructive, get them more conscious so they did less damage, maybe we could get back to the level we had been, I don't know, when the country was first founded. Maybe if we quit chopping the forest down, we could get back to some level where we had these pristine forests. What we now know, because we have an image that Native Americans just, kind of hung out around, didn't do much, it turns out that the forests we have, they mostly grew. And I don't mean by planting seeds. I mean by understanding how forests work. So they spent time looking at how does a forest come about? And they began to use that knowledge to expand and grow them so that the forest that they found anywhere they were, they doubled, tripled, and quadrupled the amount of forest that was there. And we know this now from research that they were continuously intervening in a very significant way to grow forests. They knew the cycles of the trees. They knew exactly when it was that you could cut a piece and you could move it and transplant. They knew when you could harvest it to make a basket. They knew how animals were a part of it. A forest would never farm without having animals in it. I mean, it has to have all of the animals that move through it in order to create fertilizer for the forest. So we need to go back to, and that's a part of what a regenerative process is about, is going back to having that kind of knowledge. So moving up this ladder is not an easy one. And